What have you done? Apologize to Emily.
Upon seeing me toss out the cake box that Emily had brought, John screamed as if he had gone mad. To an outsider, it might indeed seem as though I'd done something terrible. However, when I consider Emily's intentions behind bringing this cake, my actions might be justified.
Well, then eat the cake.
If he's complaining about me throwing it away, the cake inside must be delicious. Saying that, I picked up the cake box from the trash, grabbed a piece, and forcefully shoved it into John's mouth. The moment I thought he made a sound like he'd been kicked in the gut, John started shaking, his eyes rolling back.
See? What did you put in this?
I stared at the foul-mouthed John, trembling with anger. My name is Alice Johnson. I'm 35 years old and work as a nurse, but I'm currently on maternity leave, being 10 months pregnant. I married John, who works at a staffing agency, 2 years ago. We had been trying to conceive right after our marriage, but it took a long time. We considered undergoing costly infertility treatments, but John was against it, so we relaxed and continued trying on our own. During this time, we had our ups and downs, and my mental state became unstable, resulting in considerable stress. Being a nurse is a demanding job, and the challenges of conception nearly broke me multiple times. However, this year, we finally succeeded. So far, the baby has been developing well. Still, I've always been anemic, so doctors have told me to be careful. Anyway, I worked until the last possible moment, started my maternity leave a month ago, and have been preparing baby necessities. I was looking forward to the baby's birth, just planning to pass the time with some occasional exercise. I never expected things to turn out this way. There had been signs from a while back. Marrying John wasn't straightforward, and I often wondered if I should marry him at all. The reason was that he had a daughter, Emily, who was in her 2nd year of middle school at the time. I met John on a dating app. While there are various tiers of dating apps, the one I was using wasn't specifically for marriage-minded people but more casual dating. Being new to the world of dating apps, I felt hesitant to jump straight into marriage-focused ones. At the first dating app one ever signed up for, I communicated and met with several men, but the one who felt just right for me was John. John's profile only had basic information. He worked in human resources, and his hobbies included soccer and horse racing. It gave me no clue about his personality. Yet, I felt a connection and hit the like button, and when John liked me back, our messaging began. Before I knew it, we had been out for dinner several times, and we started dating. John was 3 years older than me, but he had this innocent, boyish charm, which I found endearing. So when he told me, "Let's get married. But there's something I need to tell you," I was taken aback. "What do you need to tell me?" "Well, I'm actually divorced and have a child." "What?" His revelation was so shocking that I was left speechless. Looking back, it wasn't something to be confessed before marriage. Probably on a marriage-focused app, such circumstances would need to be disclosed, but the app one was on was more casual, aimed at dating. I couldn't complain since I felt it was like being caught off guard. "Well, let me think about it." I didn't answer right away and decided to give it some thought. Later on, when I inquired more about his child, I found out that she was currently in her 2nd year of middle school and her name was Emily. I asked if I could meet her, but he brushed it off, saying, "She's in her rebellious phase and doesn't want to meet anyone. But trust me, she's a good kid at heart." While she was indeed a teenager, I wondered if it was all right for her not to meet someone who might become her mother. Still, she'd be an adult in a few years, and John assured me she was a good kid. I decided maybe she was just an easygoing child, not making a big deal of her mother's role. At that time, I felt like I was trying to persuade myself because I wanted to marry John so much. Eventually, I gave in and we married, leading to my first encounter with John's daughter, Emily. Emily had a short hairstyle and tan skin, looking every bit the typical middle school girl. She stared at me intently, possibly out of nervousness, so I tried to speak in the gentlest tone I could muster. "My name is Alice. I know it will take time to adjust, but let's try to build a relationship step by step." I tried my best to be considerate, but Emily suddenly snickered. "I thought Dad would bring someone younger. He likes young women, you know? My mom had me when she was 18. Aren't you almost 40? Hearing her mockingly ask almost 40, I felt a chill run down my spine. Such words weren't appropriate for a first meeting, especially towards someone set to become her mother. I looked to John for help, but he just gave an awkward laugh and said, "Hey, who said I like younger women?" Without really defending me. The uncertainty about our marriage life intensified. Living with such an unreasonable stepdaughter was more stressful than I had anticipated. "When do you usually finish work, Alice? You come home so late, and it wakes me up." "If you can't finish work within regular hours, doesn't that mean you're incompetent? Why fish dishes 2 days in a row? I hate fish. Don't wash my clothes with yours. I don't want them to smell like your sweat." Emily, who constantly nitpicked and snickered about everything, irritated me. I was amazed at the sheer number of complaints she could come up with. At first, I brushed it off as childish nonsense. But as her verbal jabs escalated, the stress from our attempts to conceive piled on, and my health deteriorated. My body, which was already prone to anemia, suffered further from it, leading to a hospital visit. Yet, even seeing me in such a state, Emily only sharpened her words, saying, "Ah, finally, some peace without Alice around." What was worse, these verbal attacks took place when John wasn't around. In John's presence, Emily would become silent, portraying herself as a typical rebellious teenager. That infuriated me even more, but I kept reminding myself to be patient until she became an adult. After enduring Emily's harassment while trying to conceive for a bit over a year, I was finally blessed with an angel in my belly. However, around that time, whether John got busier at work or not, he began coming home late every night. At worst, he wouldn't come home until the next morning. I can't say I never suspected him of infidelity, but my instincts told me there wasn't another woman in John's life. Of course, my pregnancy wasn't going to put an end to Emily's harassment. If anything, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the harassment became even more severe after I got pregnant. When I was bedridden due to morning sickness, she would demand, "Make food quickly. If not, break up with Dad." And when I did make food, she'd complain, "This tastes bland." Throwing the meal I prepared into the trash. Given my morning sickness, I was cooking with less seasoning as I couldn't handle strong flavors. Yet, she had no sympathy for my efforts, and I could only sigh. As I endured Emily's harassment, I entered the 10th month of my pregnancy. It felt like the baby could arrive any day. Though the baby seemed to be growing well, I recently felt more dizzy spells due to my anemia. Just standing in the kitchen would make everything wobble. I was just cautioned about it in my last checkup. Well, this level of anemia should be okay, right? Even if I felt a bit dizzy, staying still usually made it subside, so I didn't go to the hospital. This negligence might have invited misfortune because one day, as I stepped out of the bathroom, I felt an unusual drain of color from my face. Oh. By the time I realized it, I had collapsed and lost consciousness. Right before blacking out, I saw Emily looking at me, smirking. Oh no, what's going to happen to me? Is the baby okay? Fear and anxiety raced through my heart as everything went black. When I came to, the first thing I saw was the white ceiling. And the familiar scent of disinfectant let me know I was in a hospital. "Oh, Mrs. Johnson, you're awake." I met the eyes of a nurse who had come to check on me, and she immediately addressed me. "Yes. What happened to me?" "You fainted due to anemia. Your baby is fine. You were lucky to be at home. But you'll need to be hospitalized until you give birth." I see. It seemed I had collapsed due to anemia and had been urgently hospitalized. Emily probably called the ambulance, but the image of her smirking just before I passed out lingered in my mind. Still, being in the hospital felt safer than being at home, especially since I was so close to my due date. With John often coming home late these days, I would inevitably spend more time with Emily at home. If I had stayed home, I would have been continuously stressed until the birth. After the nurse said, "I'll come back later," and left, a mix of relief and anxiety left me feeling exhausted. I should rest for today. In the hospital room without Emily, I fell into a deep sleep. 5 days passed, and I grew accustomed to the hospital stay. The meals they provided were full of nutrients considering my anemia, and not having to do household chores was a physical relief. That being said, with my big belly, sleeping at night was uncomfortable. And every so often, the anemia would hit again, so I couldn't let my guard down like the nurse said. Yesterday, I got an unexpected call from a friend who was concerned about me. After some small talk, she told me something shocking. She seemed to have called just to share this news. Could that really be? I kept mulling over my friend's words and looking back on my life. Even after hanging up, my heart raced. I barely slept last night. Today, as I was reading in my room, the door opened. I thought it was a nurse, but to my surprise, it was Emily.
Feeling better, Alice?
She came in with an oddly cheerful voice. I was taken aback. Is she here to visit? It was the first time Emily visited the hospital, and John hadn't shown up yet. Of course, I reached out, but he didn't reply, perhaps due to his busy schedule. Seeing Emily behaving differently, I replied hesitantly. Yes, I am. Thanks for calling the ambulance for me. Usually, she's quite rude, but since she saved my life, I felt the need to express gratitude. I didn't really do it for you. I just didn't want to leave you lying there in front of me. But maybe I should have. Nobody would miss you anyway. Emily was back with her usual snark. Actually, she seemed even more spiteful than usual. But anyway, since you're okay now, I brought this. She handed me a small cake box. You're giving this to me? Yeah, a get-well gift. Emily smirked again, making me suspicious as I stared at the cake box. As I was pondering, the door opened once more, and this time it was John. You're late, Dad.
Sorry, just had to use the restroom.
John, scratching his head, noticed the cake box in my hands as he entered. You're back. It's been a while. Yeah, sorry. Work's been hectic, and I've been going out with the boss for drinks a lot lately. I felt uneasy as John offered unsolicited excuses. It's fine. I understand work gets busy. Exactly. As long as you understand. Anyway, did Emily give you that cake?
Yeah, I just bought it.
Emily puffed her chest out proudly. Seeing John and Emily exchange meaningful glances, I felt they were up to something. Eat the cake, Alice. If you don't, it'll go bad. Seeing John rush me to eat the cake, I threw the entire cake box in the trash.
How could you? Apologize to Emily.
Seeing me toss the cake Emily brought into the trash, John let out a scream as if he'd gone mad. From an outsider's perspective, it might seem like I'd done something awful. But when I thought of the scheme behind Emily bringing that cake, it seemed like the only logical reaction.
Well then, you eat the cake.
If he's so upset about me tossing it, it must be a delicious cake. Saying this, I forcefully grabbed a piece from the trash and shoved it into John's mouth.
Ugh, gah.
The sound he made was as if he'd been punched in the stomach, and immediately after, John's eyes rolled back and he started to shake. See? I knew it. What on earth did she put in it? I glared at the nearly frothing John, shaking with anger.
Dad! What the hell, Alice?
Emily, who had seen everything, rushed over to shake him.
Dad, are you okay?
Yeah, it's just, it tasted horrible. It seems John had fainted from the shockingly bad taste. I shivered, thinking about how I could have reacted if I'd eaten it.
Thank goodness. Alice, that was awful. Why did you make Dad eat it?
Emily, the culprit behind the cake, began to loudly complain. I glared back at Emily, my body shaking with anger. Awful? You're the one who brought this. What did you put in it? Well. Emily hesitated and looked away, so I held the cake close to her nose. She whimpered softly and covered her mouth. Hesitant, I too took a whiff of the cake.
What is this?
The first thing I noticed was the smell of alcohol. So overpowering, I couldn't bear it for more than a few seconds. Next came a scent of coffee. And, peering closely, I saw something pink protruding from the sponge of the cake. Is this raw meat? The combination was so absurd, I felt sick just thinking about it. Alcohol, coffee, raw meat. There could be even more. This wasn't something bought at a store. It was clear Emily made it herself. Everything in here is what a pregnant woman shouldn't eat. I'd been careful to avoid alcohol, caffeine, and raw meat during my pregnancy. Consuming them could harm the baby or cause food poisoning. Why would you make such a thing? But I knew Emily's motives. And I was also aware of John's complicity in her scheme. You both were intentionally trying to make me eat something harmful to harm me, weren't you? Well, Emily stuttered, clearly taken aback by my direct accusation. No matter how intricate the prank, she's still just a 16-year-old kid. She probably hadn't envisioned any other outcome besides me safely consuming the cake. I saw this as my chance to address the pent-up frustrations. Emily, why do you want me out of the house so badly? It was clear from her choice of the absurd cake as a gift that she wanted me gone.
Because you're in the way, Alice. I never asked for a new mom. You probably think I'm just a brat, right?
Emily yelled out with a childlike reason. I get it. I'm probably an eyesore to her. Accepting a new mother figure so suddenly is tough. But it was Emily who had initially refused to meet me before the marriage. Moreover, it's been Emily causing all the trouble. I've done nothing to her. I've been on the receiving end of Emily's harassment all this time. Without ever considering my feelings, she's been acting on her selfish whims. I need to stand my ground and set her straight. We need to get something straight, Emily. When have I ever called you a brat? If you feel that way, isn't it because of your own actions towards me? You can't just switch the narrative and play the victim here.
What do you know? Even Dad doesn't like you.
In a defiant move, Emily tried using John as a shield. John looked utterly drained after eating the cake. I turned to John, having something pressing to discuss. So I heard you got fired from your job?
What? How do you?
John flinched at my words. Hearing the word fired, Emily shot a surprised look at him. What? I got a call from a friend yesterday. We hadn't spoken in a while, and she told me she works at the same company as John. Her name's Ms. Young. Young, the manager. John murmured. Yes, Manager Young told me you embezzled company funds and got fired. I thought you were coming home late because of work. But were you out gambling every night, trying to make some quick money? And losing it all instead? Your monthly payments seemed like a regular salary, but were they just loans? Were you planning to get life insurance money from my death? Right. The story I heard from my friend over the phone was about John getting fired. I was deeply shocked, but reflecting on John's recent behavior, it didn't seem improbable. Wanting to get rid of me and the alignment of their interests led John to conspire with Emily. They visited me, ensured I ate the cake, and once they got the insurance money, it would have been over. But their plan fell apart easily.
What are you talking about?
John uttered, his eyes unfocused. Seeing him and the horror on Emily's face, I knew I'd hit the mark. Now, to deliver the final blow. I'm sorry, but I no longer consider us a family. I want a divorce. I'll be seeking compensation for all the deceit and harassment, and also child support for our kid. You don't have a say in this.
What the hell? That's not fair. Exactly. How do you expect Dad to provide without a job?
Their responses were sharp and defensive. But I controlled the narrative.
Unfair? Who's the unfair one? You both plotted to end my life. That's the real injustice. I don't want to raise my child under the same roof as you two. Now, leave.
With a furious blaze in my eyes, both of them were so scared that they left hastily. Screaming like that gave me abdominal pain. I pressed the nurse call button, telling her my labor had started. Though the day had been hectic, I prepared to give birth. A week later, after being discharged from the hospital with my newborn, I quickly reached out to a divorce attorney. John was visibly downtrodden the whole time, but upon seeing the attorney's business card, his face turned even paler. He begged me to reconsider, but I ignored him and went straight back to my parents' home. I later heard about John and Emily's situation from a neighbor. John, who was already in debt and untrustworthy, was demanded alimony and child support through the attorney. He borrowed even more money and paid me in a lump sum. It was clear he took out high-interest loans from loan sharks since there's no way he could get a loan from a bank with his credibility. He's probably gonna be burdened with paying back those high-interest loans. However, since he tried to take my life, He deserved that kind of punishment. I don't know who started the rumor, but apparently, Emily's attempt to poison her mother with a cake became talk of the school. Given the huge commotion over the cake, someone at the hospital must have overheard and spread the story. She became an outcast at school and seemed to have become a recluse. However, considering the money-strapped Johnson family, she had to work part-time to get by. Emily dropped out of school and started working. It's a sad story, but thinking about what she did to me, she should probably learn some life lessons from this part-time job. It might even be a good experience for her. Meanwhile, I'm living happily at my parents' home, raising my child with them. Being a first-time parent, there's a lot of ups and downs. But no matter how tired I am, my baby's cuteness melts away all the fatigue every day. Once things settle down with the baby, I'm thinking of returning to work. I'm looking forward to spending quality family time with my child and my parents in the future.